A customer asked for the item behind the counter, but pointed at empty space. It was close to midnight, the hour when the store stopped feeling like a place people used and started feeling like something left running by mistake. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, uneven and faintly flickering, casting a tired yellow sheen over the aisles. The refrigerators along the back wall breathed softly, a constant mechanical sigh. Outside the front windows, the street was empty. No headlights, no passing shadows. Just my own reflection layered over shelves of cigarettes and lottery tickets. I was restocking gum behind the counter when the bell rang. I hadn't heard the door open. I looked up anyway. The customer stood just inside the entrance, hands folded in front of them, posture slightly bent as if the ceiling were lower than it was. Their coat was too heavy for the season, collar turned up, shadowing their face. They hadn't taken a basket. They weren't looking at anything. They were looking at me. "Evening," I said, because that was the script. My voice sounded loud in the quiet. They nodded once and walked up to the counter. Their steps were careful, measured, as if they were navigating around obstacles I couldn't see. When they stopped, they leaned forward and pointed. Not at me, not at the register, but at the space just behind the counter to my right. "I'm here for the item behind the counter," they said. Their voice was soft and oddly precise, like they were reading aloud from memory. I glanced back automatically. There was nothing there, just the usual clutter. A stack of outdated magazines, a display of lighters, the pegboard where small electronics used to hang before corporate decided they weren't worth the theft. Empty hooks, dust. "I think you might be mistaken," I said. "What item?" They didn't lower their arm. "That one," they said. "You keep it just out of reach." I followed the line of their finger again. Empty space. But the longer I looked, the more wrong it felt. Not empty exactly, but held, as if the air there had shape. "There's nothing there," I said, more firmly this time. The customer frowned. It was a small expression, almost polite, but it tightened something in my chest. "There should be," they said. "There always is." The hum of the lights seemed to deepen, vibrating faintly through the counter into my forearms. I became suddenly aware of how late it was, how alone I was. "What does it look like?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Maybe I can help you find it." Their finger wavered, then steadied. "It's not for the shelf," they said. "It was never meant to be seen like that." A pause. "It's about this big," they added, spreading their hands slightly apart. "Heavy for its size. You can feel it even when you're not touching it." I swallowed. "That doesn't really narrow it down." They leaned closer. I caught a faint smell then, old paper, dust warmed by time. "You used to keep it lower," they said, "before you moved things around." Something stirred at the back of my mind. An image half-formed, a memory I couldn't place. "I've worked here 3 years," I said. "Nothing's moved back there in that time." The customer smiled, just a little. "That's not what I meant." I looked again at the space they were pointing to. The dust was wrong. Every other surface behind the counter wore a fine, even layer, undisturbed except where my sleeves brushed past. But there, in that narrow gap between the lighter display and the register, the dust curved inward. A faint outline, like something had been removed recently and the air hadn't noticed yet. My skin prickled. "I really don't see anything," I said. The customer's hand tightened into a fist. "It's waiting," they said. "You know that." The words landed heavier than they should have. "Waiting for what? For who?" "I can't sell you something that isn't here," I said, a trace of irritation creeping in. "If you want cigarettes or—" "That's not what this is," they snapped. The sudden sharpness made me flinch. They drew a slow breath, visibly collecting themselves. When they spoke again, their voice was calmer, but strained. "It belongs to me," they said. "I ordered it a long time ago. You've just been holding on to it." Behind them, the aisles seemed longer than they should have been, shelves stretching back into shadow. The store felt subtly tilted, like a photograph hung crooked. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. Their eyes flicked up to meet mine for the first time. They were lighter than I expected, almost reflective. "You do," they said quietly. "You just don't remember yet." A memory surfaced then, not fully, just the feeling of one. Sitting on the floor as a child. A counter taller than my head. Being told not to touch something because it wasn't mine yet. I shook my head hard. "I think you should leave." For a moment I thought they might argue. Instead, they lowered their hand and straightened. "Not tonight," they said. "That's fine." They turned and walked out. The bell rang this time, sharp and clear. I locked the door 5 minutes early. When I was alone, I went back behind the counter. I crouched and ran my fingers through the dust where the outline was. My hand tingled like it had brushed against static. The air there felt colder. I laughed under my breath, the sound brittle. "Get it together," I told myself. But when I stood, my reflection in the dark register screen lagged a fraction behind my movement. I didn't sleep much after that shift. The next night, the customer came back. Same coat, same posture, same quiet certainty. "I'm ready now," they said. "For what?" I asked. They pointed again. The outline in the dust was deeper. "You've been thinking about it," they said. "That helps." I hadn't meant to, but I had. All day, flashes of sensation had surfaced unbidden. The weight of something small and solid in my hands. The comfort of knowing exactly where it was, even in the dark. "I can't give you something that isn't real," I said. The customer's jaw tightened. "It's real when you're not looking at it," they said. "That's always been the rule." The lights flickered. For a moment, just a moment, I saw it. Not clearly, not fully. A shape interrupting the space. Darker than the shadows around it. Edges soft and indistinct, like it was still deciding what it was supposed to be. My breath caught. "There," the customer said, triumphant. "You see it now." The shape pulsed, once. Then it was gone. I backed away until I hit the cigarette display. "I think you should leave," I said again, my voice shaking. They sighed. "Soon," they said. "You'll come to the counter on your own." They left without another word. After that, the store began to change. Items shifted when I wasn't looking. Aisles seemed to rearrange themselves overnight, leading me in slow, looping paths back to the counter. The hum of the refrigerators developed a rhythm I couldn't stop hearing. And always, that space behind the counter felt occupied. One night, long after closing, I stood there alone and felt the pull of it. An absence shaped exactly like my hands. I reached out before I could stop myself. My fingers closed around something cold and familiar. The bell rang behind me. I turned, clutching the unseen weight, and found the store empty. On the counter, the register had printed a receipt. One item, no price. Under customer, it read my name. When I looked back down, my hands were empty. The space behind the counter wasn't. The store's aisles looped. I kept walking but never reached the back wall. It started as a practical problem. Around 2:10 a.m., when the store settled into its quietest hour, I noticed the milk fridge blinking, light dimming, then brightening again in an uneven rhythm. I'd been leaning on the counter, half listening to the hum of compressors and the tick of the wall clock, counting minutes until sunrise made the place feel normal again. Milk outages meant paperwork. Paperwork meant standing up. I stepped out from behind the counter and headed down aisle 3, the one with the cereal and canned fruit, toward the back wall where the breaker panel sat behind a locked door. I remember thinking the air felt cooler there, heavier, as if the refrigerators breathed more deeply the farther you went from the entrance. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one of them flickering just enough to irritate without fully failing. My shoes squeaked softly on the tile. Everything was as it always was. I walked and walked. The back wall didn't come any closer. At first, I assumed fatigue. Graveyard shifts did strange things to distance and time. I checked my watch as I walked, watched the second hand tick forward, steady and reassuring. I passed the same end cap twice. A cardboard display of discounted chips, its corner bent inward like a chewed fingernail. That made me stop. I turned around slowly. The front of the store was where it should be. Glass doors, lottery sign glowing red, my reflection faint and stretched in the window. The aisle behind me looked long but reasonable. Ahead of me, the aisle stretched on, shelves packed with identical boxes, labels repeating in subtle variations like a misprinted wallpaper. I took another step. The hum of the refrigerators deepened, not louder exactly, but fuller, like a chord resolving into something lower. I walked faster. My breath began to sound wrong in my ears, too loud, arriving a half-second before I felt my chest move. The flickering light passed overhead again, and again. Same flicker, same stain on the ceiling tile shaped like a continent I couldn't place. The back wall stayed distant, polite, unmoving. "Okay," I muttered. Saying it out loud helped. It reminded me I was still here, still solid. I turned sideways between the shelves, fingers brushing boxes to ground myself. Cardboard, plastic wrap, cold metal shelf brackets, everything real. I reached the end cap. It was the same chip display. My stomach dropped. I spun around, dizzy now, heart thudding harder than the hum. The store looked subtly rearranged, not dramatically, but enough to feel off. The aisles curved just slightly, as if bowing inward. The ceiling felt lower, the lights further apart. That was when I noticed the man. He stood halfway down aisle 2, hands folded around a paper cup of coffee from our machine. I hadn't heard the door chime. I hadn't seen him come in. He looked like a regular in the vaguest way. Dark jacket, tired eyes, the kind of face that slid out of memory as soon as you stopped looking at it. But he was watching me with an interest that felt uncomfortably direct. "Night shift gets to you," he said, conversational. "Happens faster than people think." "How long have you been there?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Longer than you." That didn't make sense, but my brain slid past it, eager for something simpler to hold on to. "The breaker's in the back," I said, gesturing uselessly down the aisle. "Or it should be." He took a sip of his coffee. "Should be, yeah." I waited for him to elaborate. He didn't. The lights flickered again, longer this time. In the brief dimness, his reflection in the freezer door across from him didn't move. When the light steadied, he was still smiling. "I'll get it," I said, not sure why I felt the need to explain myself to him. "Just, aisles being weird." "Don't rush," he said. "You don't want to arrive early." I started walking again, more carefully this time, counting my steps. 20, 30, 40. The shelves on either side seemed to repeat. Same dented soup can, same faded sale sticker peeling at the corner. My watch ticked forward, but the store felt caught in a slower rhythm, like it was breathing between seconds. I glanced back. The man hadn't moved. He was still halfway down aisle 2, watching me with that patient expression. "You're looping," he called out. His voice carried too well. "Happens when the store decides you're not done." "Done with what?" I asked. He tilted his head, considering. "Working, remembering, depends." The temperature dropped another degree. I could see my breath now, faint but undeniable. I walked until my legs burned, until the floor squeaked underfoot in the same places again and again. Each time I passed the chip display, it looked slightly more worn. The cardboard sagged. One bag leaned forward like it was listening. I started to feel watched, not just by the man but by the store itself, by the cameras that followed me without whirring, by the dark glass of the fridge doors, reflections lagging just enough to feel intentional. My reflection didn't blink when I did. I stopped. The aisle stretched on ahead of me, curving gently, shelves narrowing as if converging toward a point I couldn't see. The hum had shifted into a steady pulse now, like a heartbeat too slow to belong to a person. "What's at the back?" I asked quietly. The man was suddenly closer. Not beside me, behind the end cap, leaning casually against it as if he'd always been there. "Nothing you need," he said. "That's why it's hard to reach." "You said you've been here longer than me," I said. "How long is that?" He met my gaze. His eyes were flat, reflective, like dark windows. Long enough to know when someone's about to become useful. The word lodged in my chest. I just want to go home, I said. He nodded, sympathetic. That's how it starts. The store shifted. It wasn't dramatic. No shaking, no noise. But the aisles slid, reordering themselves with a soft, collective sigh. I felt it more than saw it. A subtle pressure behind my eyes, like a headache resolving into clarity. I knew the layout now. Not intellectually, instinctively. I knew which aisles bent and which stayed straight, which reflections lied and which merely waited. I knew how far you could walk before distance gave up and folded back on itself. I knew where not to look. The man watched me with approval. You'll learn, he said. Most do. What happens if I reach the back wall? I asked. For the first time, his smile faltered. You don't want to be seen doing that, he said. The lights flickered hard, plunging the store into shadow for a heartbeat too long. In that darkness, something shifted at the far end of the aisle. Not moving toward me, unfolding, becoming aware. The lights snapped back on. The aisle was normal again. Straight, finite. I could see the back wall now. Gray concrete. The breaker panel door, dull and unremarkable. My pulse roared in my ears. The man had stepped aside, clearing the path. Well, he said. I took one step forward. The hum stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard breathing that wasn't mine. I looked back at the front of the store. The glass doors were gone, replaced by more shelves stretching into distance. The counter was there, but no register, no exit behind it. I looked at the man. He raised his coffee in a small salute. End of the shift, he said. I turned toward the back wall and walked. Each step felt heavier, like moving through deep water. The air thickened. The lights dimmed, focusing inward, drawing attention to the space I was about to enter. Just before I reached the wall, I understood. The loop wasn't a trap. It was a buffer. Something on the other side of the wall pressed close, eager and patient, waiting for someone to finally arrive. I stopped. Behind me, the aisle stretched long and forgiving. The hum returned, low and steady. I turned around and started walking. The chip display passed me, fresh and new. Somewhere in the store, a door chimed. An alone employee looked up from behind the counter, wondering how long they'd been here and why the back wall felt so far away.